Hello there everyone, welcome to another D&D discussion brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast by novice writers for novice writers, but also a YouTube channel for novice writers by novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. Today's discussion is going to be kind of a quick one, but it is a very, very important one. And why is it so important? Well, you see, if there's any one singular lesson I've learned from playing tons of Dungeons & Dragons, it is this. The side characters can make or break a story. And I'll give a couple of examples right here. In the most recent campaign that I have been leading, I had the party go through this massive city looking for some gangsters, and they were very, very low on clues. I actually wanted them to try to break into a police station or try to bribe some guards or to question around the city, talk to some shady folk. One of the players was like, oh, I think I've got a contact in the criminal underworld, and so I want to go talk to them. I was like, oh, dang it. I was expecting you to travel a little bit more to get to where you wanted to go, do some break-ins, be suave like that, not just simply get the information from someone. But you know what? You gotta respect the choices of the players. So I was like, sure, you gotta go and you gotta talk to an underworld contact. And I was like, crud, who's this contact gonna be? The craziest idea came to me of like a salty sea dog hobbit who's missing an eye and just knows way more trouble than is good for him. And I was like, that is going to be this little character. So they come on up, they go into this shady alleyway, they go and they find this hobbit amongst a bunch of other beggars, and the player's like, so, I wish to find out more about this gang who dresses in blue cloaks. The little hobbit looks on up, squinting with his one good eye, and says, aye, my friend, the foot does recognize you! And the foot can help you out. For a little price, of course. Holds up a little tin, rattles it with some coins. 1 gold will tell you all that you need to know. And the character is like, oh, I already like this guy just because of his ridiculous accent. Here, have 5 coins and tell me everything you know. Oi, my friend, the foot washes himself for you. Thus was born a hilarious side character who ended up becoming not just a really good underworld contact, but also ended up becoming a good friend to the party and even helped them out in a couple of tight spots. And that's the thing. Side characters are there to help out the main cast. But not only that, they bring a flavor to the story. It's so easy to create just these side characters that will just pop in when they're needed, do something, and then withdraw, and you never see them again. You don't have to give them any sort of personality. You don't even need to give them incredible names or anything like that. It's really easy to just insert good person right here, or insert bad person here, insert helpful person here, insert annoying person here. There you go. There's your side characters. There's the rest of your cast. But that doesn't mean that they are good. And in fact, if you burden down a story with a ton of characters like that, it's very easy to just get overloaded. Now, those of you who've been with this channel for a while know that I love to knock George R.R. Martin for a lot of things. He's actually both good and terrible at this. He writes some amazing side characters with some incredible personality, some incredible dialogue, and they are fantastic. He also has an entire plethora of just nameless characters who show up, do some stuff for some scenes, even entire chapters, never show up again, and in fact you realize a couple chapters later that that entire interaction wasn't even needed. Oh, that is so frustrating, and it's super frustrating when you're playing Dungeons & Dragons and you want to get to know the world a little bit, and you can meet next to no one who actually wants to talk to you or has anything interesting to say. Ugh. I do have another example that I wish to share, and it's with the very first book that I was writing once Camille's Harem got started. You see, I had my main character make his way to a certain point in the plot. I knew what I wanted him to do next. He was going to go and he was going to train with these new magical powers that he discovered that he had. And not only that, but he was also going to learn how to be in this fantasy military that I'd set up. However, I realized that when I got to that point, that some of the characters that I made to help him out along the way, they just weren't working. They were too stuffy, or I hadn't developed them very well. And so, kind of just as a spur of the moment decision, I created, rather than these general type characters who would be very important and very good for the main character, no, I just made 3 low-ranking officers and just like, here, throw them on in. One is super funny, one has a Napoleon complex, and the other doesn't care. And I just played around with just one chapter with these characters and ended up loving them so much. Niveline, Tuffy, and Butch. A tall, smoky elf, a diminutive elf, and a guy who's part living metal. And they were just meant to kind of be there for one chapter, but I enjoyed writing them so much that they ended up lasting so much longer and becoming integral to the overall story. Now then, this doesn't always work. While I absolutely love Brandon Mull in a lot of his works, he does present fantastic cases for when you do side characters wrong, especially in his 5 Kingdoms series. When you get introduced to the raiders who are in the first book, who take on these really crazy, daring jobs to jump to these palaces that are floating through the sky in this infinite expanse, and all of these castles are rigged with traps and stuff. It's a really cool setting. A lot of the characters are really fun, but then there's some that are just like, oh, come on. I'm looking at you, Chase. Oh, you are a terrible side character. You are a terrible side character who wants to be a main character, and you absolutely suck. Why is that? Well, just as I said, Niveline, Tuffy, and Butch, the funny one, the one with the Napoleon complex, and the other who just doesn't care, that was the initial concept for who they would be, but I developed their personality quickly. Just like with the Foot, I'm making the salty sea dog of a Hobbit who knows way more than is good for him. I added in some things such as, the Foot washes himself for you. Just, he has a funny way of speaking. He refers to himself as the Foot. Already you can tell a little bit about this guy's personality. And the same with Niveline. Niveline is not just funny, she is overly flirtatious. Tuffy may have a Napoleon complex, but by golly, he's one of the most loyal friends you could ever have. And Butch, he doesn't care because he doesn't yet believe that the main character can actually live up to his reputation. But when he does, boom, he is there for my main man. And those right there are characters who are developed, who are there to support the main cast, there to support the main characters, and they develop over time as the main characters interact with them. Chase, for his part, never, ever, ever evolves beyond a brute bully who is just there to throw comments that are semi-funny. There is literally nothing that he brings. In fact, his magical weapon of choice, which is this magical rope, does way more than he does for anything in the plot. Anyway, I'm getting on a bit of a rant right here. It's not a writer's rant. This is a D&D discussion. Whew. So, coming back to D&D, this is one of the reasons why I believe that writers should all at some point or another play RPGs. They should really get into it, at least for a little while, because you have the chance to interact with side characters. You get this chance to create side characters, and you're able then to see what jives for you. You'll find out that sometimes you have a really great idea for a side character, but maybe it's the wrong story to put them in. Or sometimes you have a really great concept, but it just falls flat. It's because you haven't given it enough development. And sometimes, really bad, the side character ends up supplanting the main cast suddenly as the main character, and you don't want to do that. If you end up doing that, scrap what you're writing and start a whole other story. Or it's time to move them on to do something else and write a spin-off or something, or create a spin-off game. Because once you have established your main cast, that's who you want to have fun with. Thus, that is where all of the investment is, especially for D&D. The characters are invested in their own players, not always in the Dungeon Master's NPCs. So the NPCs need to be there to help support the main cast. They can be important. They can either have important abilities, important backstories, important information, or maybe they sacrifice themselves. There's a lot of things that they can do, but they must never take center stage and boot the rest of the cast away. It's the same for when you're writing. You'll have different side characters who are fantastic, but maybe they belong in a different story. Or sometimes they grow to be so big that they deserve their own story, but not in the story that you're currently writing because you've already firmly established who your main cast is. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I will say this. Creating good side characters is all about balance and kind of a spark of inspiration. A lot of the best side characters that you will end up coming up with are characters who were not part of the initial draft or of the initial design. They were kind of created on the spot. And when you have them going, you need to quickly figure out where their place is within the story, hence why it's a balancing act. There's plenty of other authors and other game masters out there who would give you tons of intricate advice. But what I'll say is this, you have to experiment. You have to figure it out for yourself, because each one of us who tells a story in a unique way. As a result, we have our unique forms of juggling, of balancing everything. So remember that your side characters should never supplant your main cast, and that they are in part a juggling act and a spark of inspiration. So if you feel like this is still kind of vague and kind of fuzzy and like, Lars, I'm not sure what I should really do with this advice. If there's any advice that you should take away from me, it would be this. Practice making side characters. Even if you never use them in a game or you never use them in one of your stories, write a one-off chapter where your main cast gets introduced to just some side characters that you decided to have some fun with. You create right on the spot. Maybe it was an idea that you've now had for a little while, and just see how it goes. Critique yourself. Think, did I do this scene justice? Are the main characters still the main characters? How interesting are these side characters? What can I do better? And when you practice like that, you'll find out a lot about yourself, about your characters, and about your own writing style. And if you are someone who's watching this looking for, oh, how am I going to use this advice in a game? My advice here is this. Do the same within your own game. If the players don't want to interact with one of these side characters, brush him or her aside. They are done. You might pull them back up later, but it's okay. They've done their part. But once your players find a side character who they are willing to really interact with, they like, just like the characters liked my Hobbit the Foot, that's when you know that you've got something really cool and you can play a little bit more with it. And then you start developing that character on the side and in game, and it is fantastic. All right, so that's my advice for this video. If you want any more writing advice, please go check out our podcast, Camille's Harem, found on Podbean, iTunes, and Google Play. You can also get writing exercises over our Pinterest page, and we would love to have writing discussions with you over at our subreddit. Links for all those sites are in the description. And if you would like to get in touch with us, you can either get in touch with us through the comments, especially through our subreddit, or over at our Twitter account. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss!